plants that mentioned peaker plants, and it mentioned Peabody, and I didn't know what they were talking about, and I thought immediately, well, maybe they're confused. It's the 2020A solar project that they're wanting. No, this was a peaker plant that was planned for our community. And when I did searches about the peaker plant, I didn't find a whole lot. I mean, I found some stuff, but until I discovered the magic keyword 2015A, or those letters, I didn't get any information. And 2015A means that this project was proposed in the first quarter of 2015, 6 years ago. And that, you know, most of you who know me at this point, who are here, you know I'm an avid reader and a local journalist, or I used to be. And how is it that I could not know about this plan? I read every local newspaper regularly. So it was that lack of transparency and the age of the project, and that no green alternatives were explored as a clean solution back in 2015. That's what angered me. Why couldn't I find videotaped minutes of the PMLP meetings discussing the project? The same way I could watch the Wakefield Light Commission conduct meetings on Project 2015A. And then I learned about the Boston Magazine from April 2021, last month. I mean, please keep in mind, this whole group, this whole effort didn't start until late April, so, or mid-April. So all of this is very new and very fast. But Boston Magazine published an article by Matt D'Elia titled "The Top 10 Greenest Towns Around Boston." And they ranked communities that were demonstrating how committed they were as a municipality to reducing greenhouse gas. And he ranked 40 communities in the 12895 radius. 40 communities. Peabody was at the bottom. The bottom. We were the only community to score in the single digits in the ranking. I didn't have too much pride in Peabody when I read that. And Peabody at the bottom of the list, it's not much to be proud of. So I want to change that, and that's why I'm involved. The more I learned, the more motivated I became to work to reduce CO2 emissions, not to add them as this plan would do. As a former educator, I want to set an example and have our city become a leader in the Commonwealth's transition to a clean, renewable future, instead of investing public money to build a dirty power plant. So because we have so much to talk about, I next want to introduce Councilor Julie Smith Calvin, who will explain exactly what this plant is and where it is in the process of getting approved. Julie is a member of the Wakefield Select Board. She was the first person to really express concerns about this project in her community and help to raise the issue to communities and organizations across the state like us. Welcome, Julie.
Thank you so much, Susan. I am really thrilled to be here and to have all of you show such interest in this project. I am no expert on this project, except that I was one of the first persons to raise an issue and start asking questions. So I'm gonna go ahead to the next slide. That's great. So I had a constituent literally send me the air quality permit on this project and say, have you ever heard of this? I hear that Wakefield is a participant in this. And I sent it to our Wakefield Municipal Gas and Light Department, to a number of commissioners. And I have to say, they have been very forthcoming in holding conversations around that. And for that, I am grateful. And so through conversations with them and through my own just investigative tenacity, I have put together this story that I want to share with you. And it has been very hard to find information on it. There's two acronyms I'm likely to use through this, and I just want to define them early. One is MWEC, which is the Massachusetts Municipal Wholesale Electric Company. That is the organization, it's a quasi-governmental organization. That is the organization that is building this 60 megawatt power plant. They are doing it through a contract with 14 MLPs, which are municipal light plants or municipal utilities. There are about 40 municipal utilities in the Commonwealth. They are distinguished from National Grid or Eversource, which are investor-owned utilities. So they have much more local control, and they are utility just within their geographic jurisdiction. So did you know about this power plant? This is a 60 megawatt natural gas with oil backup peaking power plant. It's called a capacity resource because it will be used to meet peak load. So when there's a very hot day or very cold day, there is a increased demand on electricity, and that is when power plants like this and others are dispatched. It is slated to start construction this spring, and though we'll talk about in a few minutes, there's some question around that. The first ability we've had to really talk about this project is when MWEC, which has bonding authority, went to the Department of Public Utilities and asked for $170 million in public tax exempt financing. The project actually only cost around $85 million. This is just one of the, this is how the bonding works. It appears that they're asking for $75 million for construction bond, which will then convert to operations bonds. So it is about an $85 million project, but they are looking for $170 million in bonding authority. It is located near a existing power plant and existing natural gas infrastructure, though it does appear that it will need to expand the existing infrastructure, as well as oil infrastructure to hold the backup oil, which involves a new tank, smokestack, and other infrastructure to hold things like hazardous gas. I want to be very clear, everything I'm telling you, I have ascertained from my research. It may have changed. This is something that's been evolving over the last 5 or 6 years. So I'm telling you what I know to the best of my ability. Next slide. So as I said, the site in Peabody already hosts a 68 megawatt gas and oil peaking power plant, which is called the Waters River Station. Since it is a peaking plant, it will also be dispatched. It will also turn on those hot days, which is when most peaking is required. And under the rules at the time that this project and the Waters River Station were built, there is no assessment of cumulative impact. And as I think Rita will talk about later, there's some serious health consequences to both being dispatched at the same time. Thank you, Tristan. Dispatch means turned on. The physical area, it's within about a half mile of various environmental justice areas, and we'll show you those in a moment. It's located within feet of the Waters River, so there's certainly some river and watershed issues with it. It is on land owned by the city of Peabody, and is likely to be managed in conjunction with the Peabody Municipal Light Plant, and there will certainly be CO2 emissions. Next slide. This is where it's located. You can see the river to the north, as well as, I think that's, is it MGH, the hospital there? And there are a number of schools. It is in a fairly industrial area, but there is residential development happening around it. The next slide gives a little more context. So these are where the 2010 census, as defined by the state of Massachusetts, identify environmental justice populations. So you can see the blue arrow there is where the power plant is to be located, and it is within about a half a mile of various income and English isolation environmental justice areas, which again is something that is contemplated in more modern and more recent legislation like the climate bill, but was not contemplated at that time. The next slide. So here is kind of the economics behind it. So 14 municipal light utilities and municipal light plants have signed what we believe is a 30-year contract with MWEC. 2 of those 14 have now approached MWEC and asked to opt out of the contract. That essentially means that MWEC has to shop their percentage and see whether any other utilities will pick it up. If other utilities do not pick it up, MWEC is saying they will continue to be responsible for the financial commitment that they have made. I can tell you that Wakefield has already disclosed that they have spent over $800,000 on this power plant. It is not near being built at this point. And that exiting the contract, they believe, will cost them another $1.75 million or so. So this is a very expensive undertaking. Next slide.
Go ahead.
Ahead.
Could I just mention that last slide, 30%, near 30% of the cost of this plant is going to be borne by Peabody.
Yes.
And we're going to give them the land to build it. Think about that as Julie continues.
Yeah, so Peabody is by far the largest participant. And I did find it curious that the land is owned by Peabody. There are, as the next slide will allude to, there are some what I consider unusual ownership structures here. So you have land owned by the city of Peabody. You have permits being issued to the Peabody Municipal Light Department, basically piggybacking on the existing power plant there. And then you have MWEC doing some things. So it's been very hard to find information because there's not one consistent advocate or project developer here, because they have really seemed to have cobbled together different permits. My main concern, I work in energy for a living. I'm very passionate about climate change and renewable energy. I actually think this project probably made sense when the light department started looking at it in 2015. I absolutely do not think it makes sense today with advances in technology, with what we know about climate change risks, and given current legislation. But really what concerns me the most as an elected official, and I should have said at the beginning, I am speaking in a private capacity, but certainly I was dismayed that as an elected official, I was never told about this. Light commissioners that were not on the light board at the time that this was voted on weren't aware of this until I brought it to them. So there's been no public listening sessions. Quite frankly, there's been no briefings for elected officials. My understanding in speaking with legislators, and I don't want to put words in their mouth, is that there was a lot of discussion with MLPs in the formulation of the climate bill, but this did not come up. And for the first time, MLPs do have commitments in the climate bill, but I'm a bit flabbergasted that this never came up as part of those discussions. So MWEC was very happy to talk about the solar and all the good things they frankly are doing, but there was no information, even on their website up until a few weeks ago. You could not find this power plant listed under their projects under development. There's lots about solar and lots about electric vehicles, and that's all well and fine, but it feels a little greenwashy to me. Most of the meetings, in fact, I would say outside of Wakefield, which has discussed this in a public forum and to which I'm very grateful, almost all meetings have happened in what they call executive session, meaning that they claim, and it may be true, but that they can't discuss it because it would share proprietary information that cannot be disclosed. I find it very hard to believe that every single discussion did that. We had some very robust discussions in Wakefield that were able to avoid those topics and still shed light on the power plants. And so, as I say, some different ownership questions that I have. And now we're at the point where the DPU is looking at bonding. It was the first time the public ever had the opportunity to speak. It was on April 26th. About 22 of us showed up, and all of us spoke against the power plants. They really wanted to focus on the financing, but our argument, rightly so, is that the underlying asset is the collateral for financing. And I believe there's a very high likelihood that this will become a stranded asset given the current climate that we are in. So again, I'm sharing with you what I know. I'm happy to answer any questions. I have a website where I have put together all the information that I've been able to find, and I try to keep it up to date, and I just appreciate your interest in this.
Julie, thanks so
Okay,
much.
we didn't, so do you want me to do this part, Logan and Susan?
Yes, you
Okay.
you are the master.
Great. So I would say it's hopeful, though I'm not super confident, but NWEC did on May 11th decide to put a 30-day pause on this project. And they said they wanted to speak with the community and look at alternatives. And so we are currently in a 30-day pause on this. I have seen no proactive outreach from NWEC to take that community input, but hopefully we can we can ask that and they will receive us. I will say that the day after this was announced, they announced an emergency meeting to discuss Project 2015A, which again, they've never named because it's easier to call it 2015A. And about 25 of us activists showed up to really hear what they were going to say and what does this 30 days mean. And they went directly into executive session and cut us all off, disconnected us all. So I would very much love to engage with NWEC. I again think that this was the right decision 6 years ago. It's absolutely the wrong decision environmentally, health-wise, economically, and transparency for this time. So that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you very much for coming out tonight and sharing all your wisdom with us. Next, I want to give some time to elected officials who are present and have to leave for a variety of reasons. If you would like to say a few words, please raise your hand and we will call on you. Please keep your comments to 2 minutes. And if you don't have to leave by 7 p.m., there will be another opportunity later in our meeting to share your perspective. Thank you. So maybe we'll just get started with Sally Cairns if she's here. Her rep is here because Sally had another meeting. I'm going to ask the rep to wait till later. I'm sorry, my assistant, my husband is like just kind of feeding me old-fashioned information on paper here. So you're,
hi, I'm Catherine. I'm Sally Cairns. I was just going to say she hopes to join later. So if she hopefully she'll be able to speak then. Thank you.
Perfect, because I know she's been at our meetings before and I know how interested she is. All right, Joan Lovely is here. Senator Joan Lovely, I hope you didn't have to leave and that you have a minute to share with us.
Hi, I am here. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Thank
you.
The Senate is in formal session, so I have that on my laptop. That's why I'm on my phone. And we're going back in momentarily, but let me speak from here if I could. Thank you for having this meeting tonight, and I appreciate it. I have met with Julie a couple of times about this. Julie, who made me aware of this power plant proposal several months ago, and I have talked to several officials in Peabody, including the Conservation Commission, the mayor, and of course, Representative Tom Walsh and Rep. Sally Cairns, just to kind of get an understanding of where this came from. That this would have started this process back in 2015, and no one really knows about it until the end of 2020, beginning of 2021, when it's heading to the DPU for its financing. I have also spoken to NWEC a couple of times, as recently as 2 weeks ago, asking about a public meeting to be able to present this to the public, since we haven't seen anything public, and not only strongly encouraged a public meeting, but said that's the right thing to do, that there's a lot of people that are concerned, And there's just been no information. So I have not heard anything back from MWAC on that, but I did want to share that I strongly believe that they need to have a public meeting. And we do know that we're in a 30-day pause, as Julie had said, with DPU. I don't know what that means either. And so we're in the middle of budget this week, the Senate, but I hope to combine efforts with Rep. Kearns and Rep. Walsh as to exactly what that means, since we're in the middle of that. And that's kind of where my office has been with this, and just trying to, again, gain information. How did this happen? What was the plan? You know, I was told, as Julie had said, that there was executive sessions, but you know, then you could read minutes. I said that wasn't adequate. You know, I recall when we were re-permitting a gas-powered gas plant on Salem Shore, when we said goodbye to an old coal plant and said yes, which is almost never done, to a gas-fired plant. That's when I was on the city council transitioning into the Senate, and we had years of public hearings and public meetings, so that everybody knew exactly what was happening every minute. This 60 megawatt plant should comply with that same process. So I'm going to stop there. And again, thank you for hosting this meeting tonight. It's very informational. And I look forward to interfacing with all of you as we uncover more layers of this onion. So thank you.
Thank you so much for being here, and we will be recording this meeting so you can see what happens after you have to leave. And I hope to see you at some of our future meetings. I have a feeling I will.
Yes, thank you so much.
I'd like to talk to now Tom Walsh. Thank you for being here, Tom. What would you like to say? Do you have a meeting to go to? Or are you here for a
I do not, so I'll stay around for a while, and I have a couple questions for you at the end, so I'm here to listen, so I'll do that and we'll talk later.
I appreciate
that's okay.
it. Thank you.
Okay.
So who would like to talk right now, because they have other places to be? We had heard from some city councilors, but they may not have been able to get here before their meeting. So we're just going to continue, and if they
Yeah, I
come-
think I saw Tom Gold earlier, but I think he may have hopped off already for the city council meeting. So I think we can move forward for now.
Well, thank you, Tom, for coming. Yes, and I know that, thank you, Assistant Ron. He's very angry with me now. Jim Matsoulis is also here, and Jim Matsoulis is the Ward 3 counselor, but I'm assuming, Jim, that you're going to be able to stick around for the whole meeting, so you'll want to hear what our next expert has to say. So I thought we would just continue with the agenda now and pick up with public comment a little bit later. So it's wonderful for me to introduce the next presenter, who I just met through this group. And I didn't meet in person because of the pandemic till a couple of days ago. But she's the co-chair of our meeting tonight, and her name is Theodora Kalpopoulos. Theodora, you can take over.
Thank you. Thank you. Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here. What brings me here? I'm a resident of this city since 1978. Even though this is my second home, my adopted home, it's my permanent home, as if I was born here. And I did get my education here. Peabody is a good city to live in, and I appreciate the diversity and the community spirit. Regarding this peaker plant, I initially became aware from a small short posting of the neighborhood's Facebook page. Then I read some articles at the Salem News, and subsequently led me to be here. Part of the reason that I'm here is because of health issues. I need to eat clean, breathe clean, and live clean in order to sustain healthy balance. I recognize that I'm not alone in practicing this approach of daily living. And I am speaking on behalf of many others who are not able to be present and for those who cannot speak for themselves. We as a community and I as an individual do not need this picker plan. Just from the get-go, it is an obsolete proposition considering the global condition and human suffering. It is also a misuse of public funds and that we will wind up paying even when it's no longer useful. Instead, we need to discuss alternative and cleaner ways to power our living and empower our lives. This is not just my problem. This is the problem of many, and we will not stop here, and I will not stop here. Thank you. Now, is Dr. Brita here? Dr. Brita Lundberg?
Yes, I'm right here. Can I share my screen?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Dr. Lundberg, she's the chair of the board of Greater Boston Physicians of Social Responsibility. Am I correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Thank you. Yes, take on.
Plus and shift. I've never. I don't know where. Oh, I'll just go share. Boom. See if it will do it. We'll go present. Sorry. There we go. Present. Am I sharing my screen?
Yes.
Lovely. All right. So thank you so much to MCAN and to the residents of Peabody for inviting me to speak with you tonight. So like this gas leak that's shown in this incredible photograph taken by an infrared camera from the New York Times, where the leak was invisible until they used this camera to reveal it. A lot of the health effects from oil and gas may be invisible to us, or at least under the radar for many of us, because of the way that oil and gas production pollutes water, soil, and air all along the process chain from the drill rig to our kitchens, and the serious health effects that pollution leads to. I'd like to suggest that oil and gas are not clean and they're not a bridge fuel, as much as the industry would like you to believe that. And by the end of this talk, I'll chat a bit about why we should be motivated to kick the habit. Let's see, there we go. So it's difficult to understand the health effects of natural gas and oil and gas extraction without understanding a little bit about how this fuel is extracted. So natural gas, which is also called methane or CH4 by the common chemical formula for it, is not your grandfather's natural gas. It's not extracted from shallow formations in the Earth's surface the way it once was. This unconventional extraction, also known as fracking, requires injecting millions of gallons of water, sand, and chemicals about 10,000 feet underground. And that will cause the rock layer to crack, and it releases the gas, which then bubbles to the surface. And many of the health effects from natural gas are in fact due to the co-pollutants that bubble up with it, if you will. So from the Earth's crust, which nature has kept safely away from us, many thousands of feet right under the Earth, are several neurotoxins and carcinogens, including lead, radioactive radon, radium, uranium, mercury, and they come up and are entrained with this gas. The fluids used to extract the gas, which include notable carcinogens from bad actor benzene, also the other BTEX chemicals, toluene, ethylene glycol, and xylene. And what I'll talk about really tonight are the criteria air pollutants, the lung irritants and carcinogens, and notably the nitrogen oxides and particulate matter. So why do we care? Well, we care about the pollution caused by natural gas, mostly because there's phenomenal leakage all along this system. Growing body of evidence shows leaks in places, according to a new report from the European Space Agency, up to 300 tons per hour. And that estimated leakage rate, which is now up to this schematic I show is outdated. It's now estimated to be 3.7% leakage rate. And that's enough to erase completely the greenhouse gas benefits of coal, not to mention that methane is 85 times more potent than CO2 at warming the climate over a 20-year range. So where do the health effects of natural gas occur, or gas and oil and gas extraction, as the folks who are in this area like to refer to it now rather than just natural gas? They're local, they're regional and global. This is a really nice review. It came out in the New England Journal of Medicine a little more than a year ago, 2 to 3 pages, and I highly recommend it because they list all of these in detail. These are all the ones that Peabody will be facing if and when this plant goes in there. And I will just be focusing on the air pollution one here, but all the ones I've highlighted in red are certainly going to be concerns for Peabody. So air pollution, this industry is responsible for producing hundreds of thousands of tons of air pollution a year. And the main pollutants resulting from natural gas electricity generation are the nitrogen oxides, or NOx. Natural gas power plants emit over 100 tons of NOx per year, roughly the equivalent of running 11 million miles in a diesel school bus. One of the most polluting types of vehicles. And interestingly, power plants double the background level of nitrogen dioxide, according to one California study. The really important thing to know about peaker plants is they only operate at peak hours. And so they start up and they stop a lot. And that is very bad because it means they run exceptionally dirty, because during startup, peaker plants produce 4 to 7 times as much nitrogen dioxide as during 1 hour of peak load operation. This is bad because nitrogen dioxide, sort of like the extensive list of health outcomes that you hear at the end of a prescription drug commercial, the side effects and the health effects are extensive: asthma, heart attack, stroke. And one of the chief reasons for this is that NOx reacts with other things in the atmosphere to form something called particulate matter. Particulate matter is really just a mixture of so-called black carbon, which is soot, hydrocarbon, nitrogen dioxides, metals. And the important thing to know is the size. That 2.5 stands for 2.5 microns. They're tiny. 30 of them can fit into the diameter of a shaft of hair, the schematic you see at the right there. So when you breathe in this pollution from something like a natural gas power plant, that PM 2.5 penetrates deep, deep into your bronchioles, the very tiny, tiny structures in your lungs that are responsible for air exchange. And there they result in aggravated asthma symptoms. When they cross from the bronchioles into your bloodstream, they lead to things like heart attack, stroke, high blood pressure. PM 2.5 is associated with an increased incidence of pneumonia and also an increased incidence of death from pneumonia. It's associated with lung cancer and diabetes. Children are especially vulnerable, and there are 10,000 excess US deaths a year from exposure to PM 2.5. There's no safe level of PM 2.5. There's no threshold. Any level is a bad level. Another concern about this new infrastructure going in here, you might feel, well, it's new infrastructure, so it's not as much of a safety hazard, right? Because it won't explode. In fact, newer gas infrastructure, this is a study of the background here is, of course, our own Merrimack Valley exploding when it was overpressurized to 12 times what those distribution pipelines could handle. But the graph in the foreground is reflective of a very alarming trend, which is a 5-fold increase in transmission line incidents or explosions in the newest pipelines. In fact, there's a higher incidence of explosion in the newest pipelines than the very oldest pipelines, as you can see from the very left of the graph. And the most concerning part of this graph is that industry has no good explanation for why this should be the case. And in case you need a good demonstration of this, just look over to Weymouth, where they've had 4 major gas leaks in less than a year of operation of that facility, any of which could have caused an explosion. So there you have a perfect demonstration of that bit of data. So why is that concerning? Well, natural gas infrastructure is often located next to schools. As you know, your Peabody gas plant will be located within half a mile of a high school. Here in Weymouth, a new compressor station located within a mile of 3,100 school children. And what I find most interesting is that when industry, in this case, calculated the incineration radius for this structure, it is 756 feet. And as you see, it is in fact 700 feet to the closest home. So they had the chutzpah to put this in with no safety assessment and with houses located in the calculated PIR, as it's called, of this facility. Also very close to a vulnerable population, as will be the case in Peabody. In the case of Weymouth, within 1.5 of populations in the very top quartile for the state of oral cancer, lung cancer, Hodgkin's lymphoma, laryngeal cancer, leukemia, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, asthma hospitalizations, COPD hospitalizations, heart attack rate, and immigrant and elderly, young, densely populated areas. Areas that by state law are entitled to special treatment because they're so-called environmental justice populations. Oops. So I would like to suggest that natural gas is a little bit like the secondhand smoke of our time. Children are most vulnerable, and these health impacts are preventable. They're not at all inevitable. In fact, when we cut air pollution, we prevent deaths within weeks. This is a study out of Yale. The co-author on it is Dr. Mary Rice at the Mass General. And they showed that within 2 weeks, asthma attacks fell, heart attacks fell, babies were born at a higher birth weight and not as premature. So all of those outcomes, we can do things about those outcomes, but there has to be political will. So in conclusion, this oil and gas infrastructure is damaging human health. There are health risks all along the life cycle, and I'm happy to take any questions at the end. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Wow, I learned a lot there. I read your testimony at the DPU hearing, but hearing it again kind of brought it more to the forefront. Thank you, Rita. And I'm glad that you're going to continue to join us. I want to talk a little bit now about this new organization, Breathe Clean North Shore. Like I said, a month ago, this was not even, a sparkle in our eye. It was just an avenue that developed. So I'd like to tell you what our goals are. People have been coming to meetings. They've been participating in DPU hearings. And we would like to educate the public in all kinds of ways. I really want to get into the schools and tap into the youth. We want to build this group. The population of the people who have been attending the meetings has gone up and down. We need a lot more help. And also, we want to set an example for community engagement. I'm so disappointed that Emwick held their public hearing at like 10 o'clock on a Monday morning. I'm disappointed that there was no translation or hearing advocate there to translate what was going on. So those kinds of things, and you'll notice when you registered tonight, you could tell us if there was an accommodation that you needed. And we want to continue in that vein. And we want to make sure that residents' voices are heard throughout this process. And it could be a long one. I mean, it's a 30-day pause, minimum 30-day pause. So I intend that I'm going to be active for quite a while. I'd like to turn over now to Murray Bejani from the Community Action Works organization, which is designed to help communities like ours in Peabody, where we had no voice, to get a voice. So Murray is going to talk about what we are going to do about the plant from a Peabody campaign perspective. Thank you, Murray.
Thank you so much, Sudi. And thanks everyone for being here tonight. So much great information being shared. Really looking forward to the questions later. So a bit more about what we're doing in Peabody specifically. Our overall goal that the Breathe Clean North Shore group has come to is to get the Peabody MLP to withdraw from this project proposal. And a big part of it, basically, MWIC said a little while back that they could be forced to reevaluate the project if enough of the stakeholders withdraw. And as Julie mentioned earlier, 2 MLPs have withdrawn so far, Holyoke and Chicopee, and we're aiming to have a whole bunch more of them. Peabody, being a 30% owner of this project, is a huge part of that chunk that and its withdrawal would be pretty significant. And Logan in a minute is going to talk more about other groups, but in Peabody, as the direct frontline, this is the community whose voices really need to be lifted up, and having the community that would be hosting the plant withdraw would definitely send a clear message. So to get there, the group is working to educate the community, as Sudi mentioned, and really raise awareness, make sure that a lot of folks, there's some new faces tonight. A lot of people didn't know about this until about 6 weeks ago. We really wanted to connect with city councilors and see where they stand on this. And they also didn't know much about this, so getting them in the loop, especially because the land for the plant, as Julie mentioned, is city property. So the city council and the mayor definitely have a role to play in this and have leverage or just power that they can implement. And then definitely want to build relationships across the region. The group picked the name Breathe Clean North Shore intentionally because this is meant to be an effort that extends beyond Peabody and includes communities around the North Shore who want to work together towards a more resilient and sustainable future. The bottom line here really is to hold decision makers accountable to their constituents. That's something that's really a trend in this process so far, as folks have mentioned, the lack of communication, the lack of transparency. At the end of the day, a lot of these decision makers, they are elected or chosen to represent the community, and they have not been doing that in a responsible and clear way. So we want to make sure we hold them accountable and encourage them to do what is best for the community. A key part of holding decision makers accountable is making sure that they talk to the community. So one of the members of Breathe Clean North Shore, Jerry Halberstadt, invited MWIC to a public meeting with Peabody residents. This is part of the letter that he sent them. You can see the parts underlined. He asked them to engage with and listen to this was in MWIC's own statement on May 11th when they announced the 30-day pause. They said one of the reasons they paused was in order to engage with and listen to the community. And so Jerry said, you said you want to talk to us. We'll host a meeting. We'd love to have you come and have a conversation with us. And this was MWIC's response. They declined and said that they're working on organizing their own public meeting, and they'll let us know when they're ready to talk, essentially. And to me, this is really MWIC holding the reins on the conversation and trying to really frame it in their way and put together a meeting that suits their interests and their needs instead of really meeting the community where they're at and engaging with the public in the most transparent and accessible way. So still some more work that we want to do on this front, and I'll hand it over to Sudi for some of the other ways that we've been working on transparency.
Thank you, Murray. We also submitted a Freedom of Information application around the lease of the city land for the plant, but we learned nothing new because they returned the same map of parcels we submitted with the application without any comment. So the only way we could interpret that is that we were correct in our interpretation. There are no leases yet on city land other than the existing PMLP land. And we also will be filing, if you want to go to the next slide, a Freedom of Information application with the Peabody Municipal Light Plant seeking access to public meeting and executive session minutes of the PMLP Light Commissioners. There has not been much information shared. If you go to their site, you can see their agendas, and every so often it'll say there's a manager's report about Project 015A, but it does not include any information about that manager's report. So what we're seeking is just more information about what they did discuss. And to do this whole thing tonight and have all of you here, we've had the great support of Murray at Community Action Works, as well as Logan Malik, who is with Mass Climate Action Network, who's been very important in this process. And Logan is going to talk about statewide campaign efforts. Thank you, Logan.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sudi, and to everyone who has gone before me. Murray, if you want to just go to the next slide. So quickly, MCAN was founded in 2000, and we focus on providing a network and expertise specifically to local communities to help them take action on climate. Since our founding, we have built a strong network of organizations across the state, and we now have 60+ chapters across the Commonwealth. For the past several years now, one of our main focuses has been municipal light plant communities, or communities served by municipal light plants. And really what we've wanted to do is work with local advocates who are passionate about seeing a clean energy transition and ensure that MLPs are very much so a part of that. And to their credit, we have seen several MLPs take leadership in clean energy and energy efficiency. And you know, that's really the focus of my work. We got involved in this effort because we saw this as really conflicting with the energy transition and with the goals of many municipal light plants, and especially with, you know, keeping in mind that the Commonwealth just passed a piece of legislation, a landmark climate bill, which requires MLP communities like Peabody to transition to net zero, meaning they are emitting effectively zero emissions by 2050. This plant does not align with that timeline, we believe. And so we've been combating this in three main ways, and I'll just talk about those briefly. We've been focused in part on a legal strategy through DPU and through the financing proceedings that MWIC has initiated by requesting the bonds of $170 million to build this plant. We have essentially requested to be a part of that case. And the main focus of our interest in being involved is to highlight the health, environmental, and financial concerns of the residents in Peabody, but also of the 14 other participating communities. We will continue in that process to whatever extent we can. We also believe that there are several other legal avenues that we can take, And it is all in the spirit of ensuring that these concerns are fully investigated and adequately addressed by whatever MWIC proposes. Next slide, please. The other focus of MCAN at a broader statewide level is supporting the 13 other communities who are a part of this effort, in addition to Breathe Clean North Shore, in mobilizing their communities. Oftentimes, as soon as they hear of this new fossil fuel infrastructure, it's not in line with the interests of the residents, and it's ultimately something that residents will have to pay for. And so we have been supporting community groups across these communities in raising awareness, bringing these concerns to light boards, and just ensuring that they have the resources that they need. Another part of this is ensuring that MWIC carries out its promise to engage stakeholders. We are incredibly grateful, and we're very happy to see their willingness to engage with stakeholders. We hope, and we will continue to encourage them to do this in a comprehensive and substantive way. And that means holding separate meetings with all of the participating communities, making sure that they don't just listen to your concerns, but that they actually incorporate those concerns into whatever plan they put forward. And if ultimately that does not happen, then we have been supporting community organizations and community members in asking their light boards to withdraw from this proposal as well. So this is not just in Peabody, it's happening all over the Commonwealth as we speak. Next slide, please. Finally, it's really important to acknowledge that there are viable alternatives, we believe, that have not been adequately investigated, looked into. And one of those in particular, this is how we avoid all of the health concerns that Brita highlighted, is by looking at alternative clean ways that we can meet any demand that may be present. And so we believe that battery storage appears to be a viable option. The National Renewable Energy Laboratory conducted a study in 2020 where they estimated the cost of battery technologies over time. And what they found was that in 2022, they expected the battery cost to range from $266 per kilowatt hour to $362 per kilowatt hour. And when you do the math, you do the calculation, what that ultimately translates to is, for a facility like the one being proposed in Peabody, a 60 megawatt facility that would last over the span of 4 hours, batteries could potentially save ratepayers 20 million, upwards of $20 million if the lower estimates are accurate. And even if it's in the middle or the higher range, it's price comparative, and it could still save millions of dollars. It is also just really important to note, this technology, while there is a lot of, a narrative about it being brand new, it's not. It is being used in communities across the Commonwealth. It is being used in municipal light plant communities. Just one example of this is Sterling. They have a great video, outlining the project that they installed and the benefits of reliability, of clean energy that came from using this alternative technology. So this is being used, this can be used, this has been used. But we acknowledge, of course, that these basic calculations and estimates by NREL, the research lab, may not apply specifically to this plant. And so one of the ways that we are supporting this effort is we are partnering with an organization called the Clean Energy Group to do a technical analysis, looking into viable alternatives specifically for what is needed in this plant and, you know, given the specific dynamics taking place in Massachusetts. And they are experts in this field. They do this nationwide. They look at alternatives to fossil fuel infrastructure, and they look at the cost. They look at the overall benefits, both in terms of upfront costs and operating costs, health, etc. So we are incredibly excited to be working with them, and we are incredibly excited to be able to share this information with the residents of Peabody and with the residents of other participating communities. And in general, we continue to support the residents of Peabody in elevating your concerns, elevating your needs and demands. And we are just so grateful for everything that you all have done so far.
Logan, thank you. You're the one that we need to thank, because that was a great recap of what's happening on statewide. And I can't say how comforting it was for me to know that there is a statewide network of people who are there to support us. We're not alone. We have a lot of work, but we're not alone. So what I'd like to do next is ask any elected officials who are present who didn't speak earlier to participate and to try to keep your comments to 2 minutes or less. And I see that Sally Cairns has been able to join us, so maybe we'll start there. Hi, Sally. Unmute. There you go.
Hey, Sudi. See you. Great to see a lot of folks here tonight. Barbara Tracy, it's been just a few years. Thank you, Sudi. Thank you, Logan and Murray and Jerry and everyone who has been organizing on this to get the word out, to educate all of us. And in the greater area, of course, I represent both Peabody and Danvers. And so, and am concerned about the neighborhood around this proposed plant. And so this is an excellent opportunity to learn more. I apologize, I had a wake to attend, and it was very wonderfully attended. And that was a nice surprise, but so I'm late. But I just want to underscore how important it is just that we, as Logan said, I think very eloquently, to assert ourselves as citizens, as voters, as ratepayers, just as people who live.
My pleasure.
What? I'm sorry, that was Siri talking to me. Hi, Siri.
Hi, Siri.
Weird. So I agree, there's work to be done. I applaud all of you for setting up this group, this information session. And the more we learn, it seems the more questions there are to ask. And so getting answers to those questions is very important. And I do have some concern. I'm hopeful about some of the new technology. I don't feel that we need to have the perfect solution in hand in order to say this is not the right project, given where we are, given where the technology is, and given our concerns. So that's my only concern, that we not feel compelled to have the perfect solution, as I said. So I'll stop there. I just want to say thanks. Hi to everybody. And especially to the Danvers peeps, there are some Danvers folks on here I'm just hearing about, and I'm so excited. Where are you? Judith and Minnie. Hi. Okay, cool. All right, I'll stop there. Thank you. Good to see you all. I'll be quiet now. I'll let my colleague from Peabody pick up where I left off.
Thank you, Sally. And I hope you can stick around till the end of the meeting, because I have an idea that I really need your help with. We really need your help with. So we'll get to that as part of the agenda. Right now, what other public officials, like Tom Walsh, who hasn't had a chance to
Here I am.
participate yet? Hi, Tom. Thanks for sticking around.
Sure. No, I just thank you to everybody. Some excellent information tonight. It's really helpful to me. There are a couple questions that I had that I think have been answered. I was very encouraged to hear that there is an outreach to the respective light commissioners, because from the very beginning, it seemed to me that the root of this issue lies with the respective electric light commissions. And I don't feel that there has been tremendous communication to them, from them, or with them. You know, I know that some people were offended early on when there were comments in the paper by our mayor when he said that when he asked about it, he was referred to Emwick, and I think people were a little bit upset about that. That was exactly the response I got when I started asking questions about this project. I was immediately referred to Emwick and let them deal with it, which is really not how you're going to solve this. This is town by town. Some great information on environmental impact. I guess one of the concerns I have, and I just want to share it with you, is you know, Logan talked about batteries, which I thought was very interesting. But I guess my question is, and this is why we need a two-way conversation with those who are proposing this, which we have not had, is there an environmental impact once the batteries have completed their life cycle? What do we do with them then? So there are issues like that, I think, that we need to be discussing as well. The one thing, Sudi, that I was very happy to hear you talk about, because I'm hearing a lot that this is Peabody land, and I've been told that it is not, that it is owned by the municipal light plant. So what you're telling me is that the leases may go beyond what is the municipal light plant, which is something I haven't heard before. And that's why you're asking for the freedom of information. Is that correct?
That is correct, and we didn't get an answer to that. We could only assume that the existing arrangement between PMLP and the city, their existing plant, is trying to be piggybacked on and expanded. And that's one of the things that raised a red flag for me, is we can't piggyback on a 6-year-old Conservation Commission plan. We can't, or a MEPA plan, or any of the documents and reviews that have happened. And we do need to talk to PMLP, and truthfully, I need the help of the city council and the legislators to make that happen.
Okay. All right. I just want to leave you with this. Joan actually was the one who brought this up to me a few months ago after talking with her counterpart, or our colleague, I should say, in Wakefield. And it has grown from there. I know Sally's all over this issue. I have a lot to learn. I did ask DPU in my letter to them, that issue that was brought up here, is it consistent with what the legislature has just done with our climate bill? So hopefully we'll get some answers on that. And I'm going to sit and listen for the rest, but I just want to thank you for this information. Very helpful. And I just want one last comment. Sally's background is fabulous. You see in the back of my house, I'm seeing, but thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Representative Walsh, we're glad that you're going to stick around, because we have some things planned, and we'd love your input on them. Are there any other elected officials who would like to speak at this time? If you could raise your hand, we would recognize you. I think most of them have moved on. And if that's the case, then we would move on to our Q&A session so the rest of us can participate. And what I'd like to do is arrange it so that you enter your questions into the chat room, and then we will recognize you to share. And some people who registered for our meeting actually submitted questions right on the registration form. So we were going to start with them, and then the rest of you let us know, and we in the chat room, and we will get to you for sure. So where should we start, Mary and Theo, in terms of the first presentation?
There's a question from Teresa asking Logan to restate the ratepayer savings estimate and including the time frame over which the taxpayer can expect to save money?
Yeah, thanks
Thank
for
you.
that question, Teresa. So I had a slide up which basically showed some cost projections that the National Renewable Energy Laboratory was projecting for 2022, and there were three ranges in the for low, high, middle, and high, and based on just a simple calculation. This is something that MWIC has actually done the same calculation just with outdated information. You know, on the lower end, it could be somewhere around $20 million, and that is total. These are basic calculations, so and that's just a potential based on what these estimates are. The reason why we're doing an analysis with Clean Energy Group is so that we can answer those questions in detail. And I appreciate Rep Walsh's comment. You know, there are definitely some questions. We don't necessarily know what the perfect alternative is, but we should at least be looking into these alternatives. This was not something that was done in 2015, and understandably, perhaps because of you know, just where the technology is, but we are in a place where viable alternatives do exist. And I would second what Representative Karen says. We don't necessarily need the perfect technology, but we still do need to address the question of, is this in line with what we want in our future?
Thank you, Logan. I have to apologize. I misspoke when I said we were done with elected officials, and I'm very embarrassed, but Ward 3 Councillor Jim Mitsoulas is here, and it is his ward where the peaker plant is going to be placed. So I would really like to give him an opportunity to speak. Jim? Jim? James? If he joins us, if he's left the room or whatever, we'll certainly go to him. I'd love to hear what he has to say and his feelings on this. We also neglected to introduce all of our Breathe Clean North Shore members, and I feel bad about that as well. So, Patty, could you help us introduce the people who are members of our group?
Members of our group.
Like Barry Halberstad, who submitted the letter, and Russ Donovan, who is here, Paula Page, who is here.
Yeah, I'm not aware of all of them, but let's start.
Kristen Brown and Tracy Valetti are here as well. These are all people who joined us at some point or more than one time to talk about this issue, and we're glad that many of them are here tonight. So if you have something you would like to say, we'd love to give you an opportunity.
Let's start with Jerry.
If it doesn't seem like I'm patting myself on the back, because I had a very small part in getting this off the ground, I want to congratulate my friends and colleagues and thank Mireille and Logan for helping us put together a meeting that's had almost 50 people in it at one time, and something I know I could not have done. So I appreciate all the effort. Teddy, you did a great job, and Susan, I admire the way you're handling the meeting. It's a great start. We've got a lot of work ahead of us, and I just want to say, moving forward, I hope we can focus on getting that professional evaluation of the options, which MCAN is helping to bring forth, so that we know what are the different ways to deal with peak power, and evaluate them. And then we should be able to partner openly with the commissioners and the management at PMLP for us to learn and for us to learn together uh, how to evaluate what's the best for Peabody and the Commonwealth. And from what little I know, we're going to go through a major transition in the way power is developed and transmitted. And I know it'll be hard for PMLP, like any existing organization, to develop a new approach and new skills, but they've done such a great job. You know, I've been in my apartment with the lights on when every town around me was black. I know they do a good job. I know they're conscientious. And when we start to consider the environmental issues, we're going to have to think differently. And I think we can rely on them, I hope we can, to develop the new skills and the new tactics. And some of these things that are promoted may not work, and we have to be very careful. And they have.
Jerry, I'm just gonna jump in just because I want to make
that's
sure we
all I
get to a
wanted
lot
to
of
say. I could go. So you have to stop me. I'm terrible.
I know.
That's it. I stopped.
We have a lot of questions in the chat, so I want to make sure we get to answer folks' questions before we have to wrap up this evening. So I'll hand it back to Sudi and Teddy to take us through any more of the questions.
Is Tristan Brown still on?
He just said he made a comment in the chat and said thanks for putting it together. So, but I know we have a lot of questions. I know maybe we can answer the question from Pat about, well, that was more of just a comment about if we could incentivize residents in Peabody to and businesses to put rooftop solar panels on their businesses. That would be a great way to generate more power in Peabody. Are you seeing these other questions in the chat, Sudi? Do you want to?
I am. I would
Okay.
love to hear from Matt Moak, who is a Peabody resident and running for the Ward 5 council seat in the election. Matt, what is your question? Am I supposed to be able to see his question in the chat room?
Did he? I don't see a question from Matt.
Well, from those who register, there's some questions. One of them is, who are the developers, investors, and supporting public officials of this project?
Yeah, I think we touched on the developers is, MWIC, the Massachusetts Municipal Wholesale Electric Company. Investors is basically the public, since ratepayer money would be used to fund this project. And in terms of supportive elected officials, so far a lot of elected officials have mostly expressed concerns around the lack of transparency with this project and lack of communication. They're all kind of getting up to speed. So that's still something that we're learning more about.
We also had a question from Pat Gozemba about how Salem is tracking its gas leak. Peabody and all other towns can do this. So that's obviously an issue we need to look at, not only for Salem, but for Peabody. And there's another question from that is to Brita about the Mass General. How can we let their administration know that this plant will profoundly impact their hospital in Danvers? I think that's a great question.
Thank you. That is a great question. And I will bring it up with my colleagues. I have some who are on the MGH Climate Commission and who have been very concerned about this project. I'm also a bit concerned that MGH might be investing in this project, and I would like to know what their involvement is, in fact, whether they have any involvement in it at all. But I just wonder, given their proximity and their needs.
Which just underscores how we have to work together with Danvers, right? That it's not just a Peabody thing. I'm sorry if I interrupted you.
That's right. I was just going to say, I have to sign off. Thank you so much, everyone. It's been fantastic and onward. So much work to do, as people have said, but You all are asking all the right questions, and I am so impressed with how this community is coming together around this. Bravo.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Rita. We had another question about, is it accurate if 50% of the municipal plants that are participating declare that they want out, then the MWIC has to pivot? Is that for sure?
This was something that was stated by the CEO of MWIC during the DPU public hearing process. So that is very much so what we believe, and that could have played a role in their ultimate decision to delay this project and to, to engage stakeholders. So it's very likely, I think if we see communities, especially Peabody, withdraw from this plant, there's just very little way for it to proceed. So it seems likely. Yeah.
Wow. So it's sort of in our lap, huh? It's on our shoulders. Wow. Okay.
Judy, could I ask a question?
Of course.
Is there someone here tonight from maybe the Wakefield group or any other MWEC light,
MWIC community?
Thank you. Yeah, specifically who could speak to their light board and their thinking. And I thought I saw maybe somebody from Wakefield on here. No?
Well, Julie was from Wakefield and she had to leave early, but we do have other Wakefield people and we have Marblehead people. Both of those
Also MWIC. Yep.
are
Okay.
MWIC investors in this project. So if anyone would like to share or talk with Sally from those communities, we'd love to hear from you.
We spoke to our light board about it. We brought them information about alternative technologies that would work better. We brought to them all of the health issues and how also ultimately how amoral it is to get your energy at the health risk of others. They were intractable.
Very devoted to what MWEC has been telling them, were they?
Yeah. And
Seems to be, and even with Judith Black, noted storyteller, even with you delivering the message, they were intractable.
Nah, I wasn't at that meeting.
She was out delivering flyers all around the neighborhood last week with other volunteers though from 350 Marblehead. So, and I loved her story at the DPU hearing. That
was pretty neat.
Thanks.
Maybe she could repeat that sometime for one of our events. What do you think?
I love it.
I know also Phil Kersey is here. He had mentioned in the chat that he was, I think, on the Wakefield light board. Phil, did you want to say something?
Yes, that's correct. Sorry, I don't have my video up. I don't know why, but I am a gas and light commissioner in Wakefield. I'm an advocate for the project. Thank you for inviting a skunk to the Rose Party. We have a responsibility to keep the lights on. We have a responsibility to keep rates low. My background with General Electric, New England Power, National Grid has all been in power generation distribution. One of my jobs when Salem Harbor was sold to Pacific Gas and Electric, the Pica units did not go with them, and I ran those plants for 2 years. There were 15 units, oil-fired diesels in Gloucester, 4 in Newburyport. Dispatch would call, summer and winter mostly. Could be anytime, in the afternoon, whenever the peak, and they would run for several hours. And they were needed then, they're needed now. Of course, we got rid of all the dirty diesels. They were put on boats and they were sent to the Dominican Republic, or 2,000 miles up the Amazon. They were replaced by cleaner Pekin units. And, Wakefield has batteries. Batteries are good for a couple hours. These units can run for several hours more than that. Batteries won't be able to fill the need. And going forward, we're going to need these more as we bring on more renewable energy. And we are bringing on more renewable energy. And MWIC is involved with us in projects to bring on more wind. We already have wind. And Wakefield also has 2 other peaking units. So if you are able to, win your fight and shut this down, Wakefield's 5 megawatts or 4.6% of the output will be looking to going to the ratepayers for $2.6 million. There'll be a negotiation that takes place, so we don't have a final number. But if you can multiply that number times Peabody's position, and I don't want to speak for them, should give you some idea of how much you'll be asking the Peabody ratepayers to write off. These were conceived in 2015, contracts were signed in 2017, and I need a story for the ratepayers. So,
and I do just want to say, first off, thank you so much for being on this call, Phil. I appreciate your willingness to engage with the residents of the community where this plant is going to be built. And I do just want to say, there is varying opinions as far as the implications of this plant. I know that there was a lively conversation at the Wakefield board meeting as far as whether or not this is a good decision, and there is ongoing disagreement. And that's been the case, across multiple light boards where, there's varying opinions. And ultimately, it is the responsibility of light boards to represent community members, to represent the residents. And that's why it's so important for us as those residents to raise our voices and to engage in dialogue. So thank you so much, Phil.
thank you.
Thanks, Logan. And I know we're getting close to 8 o'clock, so I'm thinking that we will move into wrapping up in next steps. I just want to answer one last quick question I saw in the chat about what the plans for the Waters plant that PMLP also owns, the Waters Rivers plant. And some have said that there are plans to retire it, though there's no evidence of that thus far. So it would look like there would be 2 peaking plants on the same property if this new plant were to be built as well. So that's an answer to your question, Russ. And with that, I'm going to pass it back to Sudi, and I'll share my screen again for our next steps.
Thank you, Marie. Well, we have thought about some things that we might do, and it all counts on you participating, you continuing to connect with us. But we agree with MCAN, we need MWEC to meet with each of the 14 involved communities, including Peabody. We need MWEC to meet with others too, including experts on different types of alternatives besides battery storage that might work for us, for instance. We need to support MCAN in their joint effort with Clean Energy Group for an comprehensive alternative energy assessment of what we're looking at. That's what we have here, a pause, a breath, to take a look at what was proposed, what has changed since then, and what the possibilities are. So some of the actions that we want to take is we want to invite you all to our next meeting. We traditionally meet on a Tuesday or Wednesday. Our next meeting is on June 1st at 6:30 p.m. It will be a virtual meeting. And we have a couple of plans for things that are coming up. One is June 11th is the date where the 30-day pause that MWEC has granted will end. It's a minimum 30-day pause, and certainly I hope they'll take more time. I would think it would take them more time to meet with 14 communities. But we are going to do some kind of event to mark that June 11th ballot initiative delivery or whatever. We need to talk about what is that event? Is it at the plant? Is it somewhere else? And then we have some creative ideas and this is where I was going to appeal to Sally, is that I would very much like to see us embark on an art project, climate-related art project involving the Danversport Bridge. The Danversport Bridge connects the two communities most affected because they're within the half-mile radius of this plant. And I think it would be nice as each day when they go by, there was some kind of visual reminder about climate change and us all being responsible to avoid gas emissions. So we have some ideas on that, and certainly it will be stuff that we'll be talking about, but we'll need Sally's help to make sure we can add to the demeanor of the bridge. So I look forward to talking to her about that. And then the biggest thing you can do is make sure that you have signed the petition to MWIC to stop this plant. And that link is in the chat room right now, so you can follow it. And obviously, those of us who got that petition before, it worked to a certain degree. I think it had a role in causing the plant. So those are the next steps that we have. And this slide we're going to leave up. These are our website addresses, our Facebook address, and our Gmail address. So please communicate with us if there's something you would like to do, if there's one of the ideas that we presented really strikes a chord with you. We want to hear from you. We don't have a lot of time. We can't divide amongst ourselves. We need to move forward and express our feelings about this plant. And I hope you agree with me. So with that, unless anybody has something important they want to share, I think we should say goodnight and hope to see you soon.
Thanks, everyone. We'll be in touch via email with future meetings and other steps you can take. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Thanks so much.
I just want to, may I just thank Sally and Tom for taking the time to be with us. The legislature is very important as their citizens, and they have a stake in this, and we need to work together. Thank you for being here.
Agreed. Have a wonderful rest of the week. I hope you enjoy the weather, and we will be in touch with you if you're not in touch with us. So look forward to seeing you again.
Thanks,
Good night.
Sudie. Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Good night.
Right.
I lost the screen, ladies.